portion was phenomenal. And so I just want to say thank y'all for hanging in with us, and we're about to get started. So, on behalf of the Campaign for Criminal Justice Transparency, I want to welcome each of you to this evening's second biannual Kalamazoo Judicial Forum. We gathered tonight with purpose, to learn, to grow, and to take another step towards true transparency and understanding in our legal system. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Those words ring as true now as they did generations ago. They remind us that justice is not an abstract idea. It is a living practice shaped by the choices we make every single day. It is only right that we gather here at the Douglas Community Association, a space that has stood for more than a century as a cornerstone of justice, education, and empowerment in Kalamazoo. Founded in 1919, the Douglas has long been a safe haven for Black families, a hub for organizing, and a center for learning, healing, and social change. Through generations, this building has carried the weight and the hope of our community, hosting everything from civil rights meetings and youth programs to cultural celebrations and forums just like this one. We want to take a moment to extend our deepest gratitude to the Executive Director, Stacey Ledbetter, and the entire Douglas staff for opening their doors, for their continued partnership, and for the vital work they do every day to ensure this space remains a living, breathing home for community progress and connection. The Douglas reminds us that the fight for fairness didn't start today, and it doesn't end tonight. It is a continuation of a legacy built by those who believe that community is our greatest form of resistance and our powerful tool for transformation. And right here in Kalamazoo, we've seen what it looks like when community chooses to stand up for one another. In recent weeks, our city has been tested. Emotions have run high, tensions have surfaced, yet even in those moments, we have witnessed something powerful. We've seen our young people, our parents, and our neighbors choose unity over division. We've seen a community to refuse to let anger define us and instead commit to accountability, compassion, and growth. Each day we rise, we are given the opportunity to choose what kind of community we want to be. We can choose to work together. We can choose to hold ourselves and our systems accountable. We can choose stability over chaos, community over conflict, and growth over regression. As we enter this conversation tonight, we do so under a shared set of community touchstones, our collective guide for how we engage with one another this evening. Extend and receive welcome, because everyone here belongs here because you are a part of this community. Be present as fully as possible. Bring your attention, your heart, and your respect into this space, and we will ask that you silence your devices and minimize distractions. And listen deeply. We ask that the audience listen to understand and that our judges do as well as the questions are being asked of you. Practice patience before reacting. Expect and accept non-closure. Some conversations don't end easily, but trust the process. Growth takes time, and conversations such as these can and will continue as long as all of us here continue to show up and do the work. These touchstones remind us that tonight is not just about hearing from our judges, it's about hearing from one another. While the conversation is moderated, the questions have all come from you, the community members sitting in this room. So we thank you for your contributions, your curiosity, and your courage in asking what needs to be asked. Transparency is not only about access to information, it's about access to trust. And that trust begins right here, in rooms like this, where community members and justice officials come together face to face to talk honestly about the systems that impact us all. So tonight, as we engage in this important dialogue, let us hold close to the words of Dr. King, that injustice anywhere is a threat not just to the courts, but to the very soul of our community. Let us continue to be a people who stand for what is right, who show up for one another, and who believe that justice and humanity must always walk hand in hand. Welcome to the Judicial Forum, and welcome to the DCA, a place that has carried our stories, our struggles, and our strength, and continues to remind us what's possible when community leads. As we prepare tonight's dialogue, it is my true honor to introduce a woman whose leadership, compassion, and lifelong commitment to education, equity, and community transformation truly embody the purpose of this evening. Mrs. Makinga Bergen has spent more than 29 years serving as a public school educator and administrator in both urban and suburban school districts across North Carolina and Michigan. Her life's work has been rooted in helping others find their purpose, empowering systems to work better for people, and ensuring that every student, educator, and community member has the tools they need to thrive. Currently serving as the Associate Vice President for Student Development Services at KBCC, Mrs. Bergen leads with intentionality and heart. Her leadership is defined by her unwavering commitment to equity, community, and cultural responsiveness, principles that align perfectly with why we are gathered here tonight. She works every day to make sure institutions not only educate, but also empower, creating environments where belonging is real and every voice matters. Her impact, however, extends beyond the walls of education. She has been recognized for her outstanding community leadership and service. Mrs. Bergen also serves on the board of directors for ISK, the Wise Men Foundation, her Cambridge Foundation, and Griffin Place, while maintaining active membership in Delta Sigma Beta Sorority, Incorporated through the Kalamazoo Alumni Chapter, caring for the sorority's rich legacy of scholarships, sisterhood, and public service. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Everybody can be great because everybody can serve." Mrs. Bergen's greatness shines through her service, not just to students, but to the entire Kalamazoo community. She reminds us that leadership is not about titles, but about transformation, not about power, but about purpose. So tonight, as she takes on the role of moderator, guiding us through the important conversation on justice, transparency, and growth, we do so knowing that we are in the hands of someone who leads with wisdom, compassion, and integrity. Please join me in warmly welcoming our moderator for this evening, Mrs. Makinga Bergen.
Over like, what is she talking about? Good evening, everyone. So, as you heard, my name is Makinga Bergen. For nearly 30 years, I have supported young people K-12 to post-secondary education systems and serving in this great community. I have seen firsthand how our court systems intersect with young people's lives, with families. I know how much can be done when our leaders listen and collaborate with the community. Tonight is about creating understanding and building bridges between our community and the judges who serve. Transparency, access, and community trust are the things we will explore tonight through respectful dialogue and genuine curiosity. So, let's meet our judges. We're going to start on this side. Judges, if you will please give us your name, your court, or the division, and then please share your judicial philosophy in 2 minutes or less. I'll repeat that last part. In 2 minutes or less. All right, we'll start over here.
My name is Namita Sharma. I am in the Family Division, which is located on Gold Road. I am one of 3 judges out there who do divorce, custody, parenting time, and we handle the abuse and neglect docket as well as the juvenile justice docket. So that's split amongst the 3 of us. And my judicial philosophy is to be transparent and open and follow the law.
All right, thank you. My name is Beckett Jones. I'm a judge in the 8th District Court. I've been serving on the 8th District Court since being elected in 2022 and 2023. My service is really related to everything in the district. So we have a civil docket, we have a criminal docket, and then I handle local misdemeanors all the way through. And then felonies, with district court judges, we deal with those preliminary examinations. So anytime you read the newspaper, the judge decided there was enough information for the case to go forward with trial. That's a district court judge making that determination. My judicial philosophy really revolves around kind of fundamental fairness and transparency. I am pretty straightforward about calling a spade as it were within my courtroom. If I see something from, and I particularly deal with attorneys, if I see something from either side that I have an issue with, I'm generally pretty straightforward in terms of pointing it out and having conversations. I try to educate the best that I can from that perspective. I see myself as both a judge and to a degree an educator for younger attorneys within our bar.
Hello everyone, I'm Tiffany Ankley. I'm a probate judge, but I'm currently assigned to the 8th District Court with Judge Jones and Judge Parker LeGrand. There are a total of 6 of us currently working in the District Court. My judicial philosophy, I guess, is one of, although what we do is punitive in nature, it's also an opportunity. And I have that conversation with many of the folks that come to see me. Obviously, we didn't invite them there. They come to us. But to still just have that conversation. In fact, I had an opportunity today to talk to a young man who's currently on probation, just got a job, probably the first job that he's had in a number of years, and he was so proud to come in and tell me, of all people, that he had a job. And so, you know, those opportunities to have those conversations, we have resources. Yeah, court is punitive, but it is also an opportunity. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Christine Morse, and I serve in the 9th Circuit Court, the Criminal Division. So I'm one of 4 judges that handles felonies and high misdemeanors. And my judicial philosophy is ensuring justice is served with empathy and fairness. And, you know, we have a very big responsibility to keep our communities safe. But I also see it as a big responsibility to treat everyone with kindness and that everyone is a human being that comes before us and acknowledge that and listen.
My name is Ken Barton and I serve in the Family Division of the 9th Circuit Court with Judge Sharma down there on the other end. In Family Court, we handle both juvenile cases, also neglect and abuse cases, but also custody matters and divorce matters. And I've previously served where Judge Morse is in the Criminal Division. I think the position I'm in is really important to listen. Everyone's got a story, and you might not always understand the background behind that story. And I feel that the courtroom needs to be a place where people can feel heard and really listen. So that's really my philosophy, is listen to who's in the courtroom, understand the context of what they're telling you, interpret the law in a way that acknowledges that context.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elisa Parker LeGrand. I serve in the 8th District Court. My colleagues already explained what we do in the 8th District Court. I also have the opportunity to serve as the Women's Drug Treatment Court judge. And so that program, our treatment court programs, are opportunities for people who have either been sentenced or land in those courts to get connected to treatment opportunities. And so I say that because I believe my judicial philosophy would be one of understanding toward justice. The reason why I said understanding toward justice is because, one, we do have a job to follow the law to ensure that the outcomes are in compliance with what the letter of the law tells us. But we also have a responsibility to look at every case on a case-by-case basis and to come up with what the outcome needs to be, whether that's a bond decision, whether that's a sentencing decision, whether that's a decision on a violation of some sort, based on the facts and circumstances that are in front of us. And that is not the same for everyone. So I don't like to go and have a cookie cutter philosophy. Even though the law is this, the law may need to adjust based on who is in front of me and what is going on. So that's why I say understanding toward justice.
Good evening. My name is Curtis Bell, and I am a probate judge. I have formerly dealt with family court-related matters. I did that for 8 or 9 years. Then I moved to the probate court and did that for 8 or 9 years. And the last couple years, I have worked with the civil division and assigned as a business court judge. Currently, I am assigned in the new division that we have created in the Circuit Probate Court, which is the Civil Probate Division. And so that's a new division that started off just this past year. So matters that are either related to probate court or related to the Civil Division will go to one of 2 judges, and I am one of those 2 judges. In terms of philosophies, the docket has varied greatly, as you can imagine, moving from different type of case to different type of case. And you really, as Judge Parker indicated, you really have to have a different sort of flavor with the different type of cases that you're working with. So for those who need patience, you have to give them the patience. For those who need sternness and to be put in check sometimes, they need to be put in check. And you also then, because we are responsible and we expect people to be timely, we have to be timely both with regard to when we show up as well as when we render our decisions. So those are sort of overriding philosophies that I have and I've adopted.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're going to start with our first area. The first area we're going to explore together is understanding the judiciary and its role. So we want to kind of demystify court systems a little bit. So I'm going to start with Judge Jones, and then I'll ask Judge Bell. I know we've worked together on a lot of things, and I don't know why I'm getting old. Judge Bell. Yes, see this one green? This green one right here? Okay. So Judge Jones and Judge Bell, what do you believe is most misunderstood by the public about the role of a county judge?
Most misunderstood thing. I think that when you're talking about any role like a county judge, something similar to elected position, I think there's assumptions built into it by the public. And I think that because I had them growing up, right? When I was growing up, even in my 20s, in undergrad and law school, my real assumption was that judges were there as almost an arbiter to collect money for the county. And that was a belief that kind of permeated where I grew up on the north side of Lansing. That's what judges did, right? We're there to essentially give a tax to the working class and the poor through this process. And I think that's something that's felt by a lot of those communities. I think those presumptions kind of extend. And if you never see the other side of it, I think they permeate. So that's an assumption that I think a lot of people walk into court today, especially in the criminal realm. They assume that we're going to do things because we're trying to benefit directly the county. I can tell you that's probably the furthest thing I can think of from the truth. I know every single one of the people sitting up here, and I've sat in too many judicial meetings to count. I can promise you the one conversation that has never occurred ever is, how much money do we need to raise this week? It's never happened, it never will happen. It's not a consideration, it's not a thought process.
Thank you.
Our
Judge Bell?
county administrator is sitting there, so, I'm sorry, we're not revenue generating.
Judge Bell?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's the amount of discretion that people think that we have. Okay? People think that we sit up there and, we're wearing our black robes and that we just kind of make it up, right? That we can, based on, regardless of the facts, we can just kind of come up with a decision. That's not the way it works. We are obligated to follow the law. We swear to follow the law. Now, we do have room for discretion here and there, but things such as, even to the point of, evidentiary rulings or what we're going to admit. So when you have the self-represented litigants, they don't necessarily know all the rules, and we can't make different calls because they are self-represented. I think sometimes they think it's taking it personal. But we have to follow the law just like everyone else has to follow the law. And we have to follow what those rules say. And I think from my perspective, that is the biggest kind of misconception that people have. Because if we could just make it up, there'd be a whole lot of different decisions out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So along those lines, Judge Sharma and Judge Parker McGraw, can you briefly describe and explain key differences between district court and circuit court, and kind of what are those responsibilities within those?
So I'll kick it off. The way I like to explain it, and I have kids that come to court a lot of times, so if I'm explaining this to you all like your kids, forgive me, but I think it's the simplest way to do it. In our judicial system, we basically have these different tiers. The district court is where everything starts. So I like to refer to the district court as the people's court because we're going to see everything. When it comes to a criminal case, we are dealing with every criminal case at the point where that criminal case is starting in the court process. So you get arrested or you get a ticket for a crime. Your next thing that you have the right to do is have an arraignment where you get read your charges and you're told what your penalties are. That happens in the district court. If you are charged with a felony, that means that you're effectively going to have prison time. It's a little bit more detailed than that, but to keep it very simple, if you're charged with a felony, that means you're probably facing some type of prison sentence. Those will go to the circuit court. But before those cases can go to the circuit court, the district court judge can make a determination as to whether or not the prosecutor has enough probable cause to move that case forward. And so that happens at preliminary exam, and that happens in the district court. District court judges also handle misdemeanors, and so misdemeanors are typically charges that result in about 93 days in jail or up to a fine of $500. Some are more, some may be less, but that's the typical amount of time that you get in a misdemeanor case. Those are handled by your district court judges. So that's what happens on the criminal side. On the civil side, district court judges, the civil cases are cases where, how I describe it to kids, are two people have a dispute and they need somebody to make a decision. So your criminal cases are, you broke the law and you are facing a possible consequence. The civil side is two people have a dispute, somebody has to make the decision, that's either the judge or the jury. On the civil side, the district court handles cases up to $25,000. If it goes higher than that, then that goes to the circuit court. After that, Judge Sharma will take it from there, but the circuit court is where, again, those cases that are facing prison time, those cases that are above the $25,000 mark, those are handled by the circuit court judges, but there's also specialties which Judge Sharma will touch on special areas that also are just handled by the circuit court.
Oddly, I am a district court judge, but I am assigned to the circuit court. So when I was appointed, our chief judge said that 8th District Court is dead to me, which was not a very nice thing to think about. But anyway, the point is that I was, we have what's called a concurrent jurisdiction plan, and that allows us to sort of move people around. That's why Judge Ankley, as a probate judge, is in the 8th District Court. So, in circuit court, there's a phrase, I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, they were bound over. Have you ever heard of that phrase? Do you know what that means? That was what Judge Parker LeBron was talking about. When they have the preliminary exam and they find that there is enough to bind over somebody to go to circuit court, then they'll go up to circuit court for the steps that I just saw that the defender's office had a lovely chart about beginning from arraignment all the way through to sentencing. In circuit court, we hear juvenile cases. Michigan has 83 counties and everybody does it differently. In Kalamazoo, we are doing it in a way that we are having all of the civil division, probate division, and family division at the Gull Road Courthouse. And this is relatively new, and then all of the criminal division is in the Pratt Justice Center. So divorces are never heard in district court, custody, all of those types of things. And also abuse and neglect cases are never heard in district court. But we don't hear landlord-tenant. We don't hear those types of disputes that might come up in district court. Circuit court also has above $25,000 in civil division disputes all the way up. Judge Bell had a negligence case last week with a jury trial. The jury trial came back with $2 million in their decision about how much to award the plaintiff. And in criminal division, the plaintiff is represented by the prosecuting attorney, and all along the back there, the defendants, the accused, in both the district court and in the Ninth Circuit Court, they're represented by the Kalamazoo Defender's Office. So raise your hand if you're a Kalamazoo defense attorney. Kalamazoo Defenders. There they are. So they are the people who are assigned to represent the accused who, where's, no, I don't think he's here anymore. I was explaining that their constitution says that you are innocent until proven guilty, and his question was, so even if you're innocent, there it is. The jury might come back and say that you're guilty, or vice versa. Yes, that does happen. But it's a jury of your peers that are pulled into court to make a determination of whether or not there is enough proven beyond a reasonable doubt about what you were accused about. So the Ninth Circuit Court is where you would have those jury trials with the 12 people versus how many? 6 in district court. And that's part of the difference. There's probably a lot more, but if you give the judge a microphone, you'll never go home.
I'm learning this like being in a Baptist church, and that's why. Okay, here we go. So, we have like 7 sections to get through. We are in section 1, okay? So, just a couple more questions. Judge Ankley, how do you approach cases where the law seems clear, but the outcome feels unjust?
Still gotta follow the law. But sometimes we can get creative in the outcomes, depending on the situation. So on the civil side, it might be a landlord-tenant case, and those cases are pretty clear. Landlords, tenants, eviction, there's very strict time guidelines. Most of the tenants are not represented, most of the landlords are. We get pages and pages of handwritten explanations as to why I couldn't pay my rent. Well, it's not really a legal basis to stop the eviction. But sometimes there's something in there that might just hit on one aspect of oh, they weren't going to take the payment from Housing Resources, or they weren't going to take the payment from DHHS. Well, now we got an issue. We can stay the eviction, give them a little bit more time, maybe, sort of, kind of. Criminal side, again, the statutes are generally pretty clear. But again, you can get creative with the outcome. Not everybody needs probation, and in fact, our legislature has told us not everybody needs probation. In fact, most of the cases that come through the district court don't end up on probation. It's a fine, it's a waiver of the fines and costs. It could be that they were arrested and spent a night in jail. It could be credit time served. And so there's a lot of ways that we can get creative on the back end.
I can appreciate that. When I served Kalamazoo Public Schools as the due process hearing officer, I found myself looking for reasons to keep children in school. Judge Bell, you know that about me very well, because there usually was a good reason why the student may have done the infraction. I mean, there's never a good reason to break a rule, but there is an opportunity to teach, which is what I heard Judge Parker say earlier. Okay, so Judge Barnard, do judges have the power to lessen or adjust charges if they believe that the charge isn't consistent with the act that was committed? And then Judge Morris, I'll ask you to also answer that question.
Well, I think the charging decision or plea offer decision has to come from the prosecuting attorney, between the prosecuting attorney and the defense attorney. The judge really, unless the defense attorney comes to the judge and asks for what's called a Cobb's agreement, it has to be initiated by the defense lawyer, and with the consent of the prosecutor, then the defense lawyer can ask the judge what the judge would likely sentence and perhaps make some arguments to persuade the judge that a certain outcome is appropriate. But in terms of changing the actual charges, that would be up to the prosecutor.
You have anything to add?
I mean, that sums up really the question.
Great, thank you. We're moving right along now, look at you. Yes, oh, Judge Jones.
So the one important thing I'd add to that is, we've talked about it a little bit, so the preliminary examination is kind of the big important part of that discussion. So that's when the case is brought forward, the district court judge makes a determination about whether there's probable cause for the case to continue. If the district court judge decides that there's not probable cause, say on home invasion of the first degree, it's not all there, but it is all there for, say, home invasion of the third degree, then yes, the judge does have discretion in that type of circumstance to lower the charge that actually moves forward to circuit court. That's based on the proofs that are presented in the preliminary examination, but that's where you primarily see a situation like that on the criminal side of the problem.
How often does that happen? How often have you all had to do that?
Happens more often than you might think.
I agree with Judge Jones. It happens more often than you think. And I would just also just add an addition to what Judge Jones says. Ultimately, at that probable cause hearing, if the prosecutor did not prove the elements to move it forward, then the judge's decision at that point would probably be to dismiss the case. So that also is within those parameters.
Great, thank you so much. All right, so I want to shift onto our second section, which is around community engagement, trust, and access to justice. So in various organizations in our community, there is an intentional focus on bringing diverse voices together. We are raising here tonight concerns of fairness, access, and understanding. So with that in mind, and I'm going to start with Judge Parker-Drone and Judge Barnard. In your view, how does community engagement enhance the work of the judiciary and strengthen public confidence in the courts?
I think it's important all around. One of the things that happens pretty often in our court is we have court watchers. And I think it's important to have people from the community coming to see what actually happens in court. Even though a lot of things get put out there in the media when it comes to judges and courts and police officers and whatever the case, people don't have, the general public doesn't often have a lot of interaction with the court. So in general, when you have people in your general public who may not ever get a ticket, may not ever have to come to court for something, that can come and see how the process actually works, you get the opportunity to, one, educate yourself on the realities of things, but two, then you get to lean on some of these other institutions who may want to raise concerns or issues, not just about the judiciary, but about our defense bar, about our prosecutors, about lawyers in the civil division, about our clerk's office. Like, we don't fully always know those things unless members of the community come and raise these issues. So I think it's really important that the community takes a part in educating themselves on what's going on. We're all elected officials, and so we do have accountability to the citizens. And so I think it's important that we do things like this so that we can answer those questions. Of course, there are things that we can't answer, we can't give direct answers on for a lot of reasons. We have judicial canons that we have to follow, but I do think that it's important that you know who we are, that we exist in this community, we live in this community, that yes, we might wear a black robe, but that's a job, that's not our whole identity, and that we care about this community and the decisions that we make. And I think that when you don't have that interaction, a lot of times you just see this person who has power in a silo making big decisions, and there's a lot of commentary about it, but you may not have an understanding about what's going on.
And I would also focus on the aspect that a lot of citizens will come to me and say, hey, I've got this great idea for mentoring youth, or I've got this great idea. And so it goes both ways. I learn a lot from the community, and I can incorporate that into some of my rulings and some of the programs we have. We certainly have a lot of court programs, whether it's drug court, other programs, but I feel a lot of success with helping some youth with finding mentors in community. And so I think that that's an important aspect of how we evolve the community.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone being here this evening. This is actually a really good show and representation of people caring about our community. So I'd like to pause for a moment and give my audience a round of applause. Judge Sharma, what can ordinary residents do to push for better coordination between courts, law enforcement, and federal databases so that a clean slate truly means a clean slate? And then Judge Angley, I'll ask you to follow up.
So, when you say federal, I mean, there's a state database, there's a federal database. So, as to both, the courts just have to hold people accountable. That's about the level of involvement that we can do. We don't maintain the database, we don't control the database, but paperwork, which you would all be shocked, as I was, as was Judge Parker LeBrun, when we were appointed 4 years ago, about how much paperwork is involved as being a judge. So making sure that the orders are correct and that they're being followed by those who maintain the database, and holding police accountable to the degree that you can. They work hand in hand with the prosecutor, not with the courts. It's inappropriate for them to talk to the courts because they are law enforcement. So they work with the prosecutor to build a report, to make a report, and then the prosecutor charges and decides certain things. As far as the clean slate goes, though, that is up to the database owners, Michigan State Police.
I'll start here and then I'll come back.
I would just say too, that ultimately, when I sign a court order, it needs to be correct. It needs to be what I ordered, and I have to be held accountable to that as well. From me, however, once I sign it, and it's all done electronically now, as you can well imagine, it goes to our disposition, at least in district court, and then we have data entry people who update the database, right? Numbers get transposed, letters get transposed, every fingerprint, set of fingerprints has a number associated with it that tracks that case from start to finish. And I know at least in Kalamazoo, we are very careful to make sure that our cases, once they are abstracted to the state police, they have a beginning and they have an end. I can't speak to all of the other counties in Michigan, and it's frustrating because when we're setting bond, we're relying on criminal histories, and a lot of the criminal histories are incomplete, a lot of the criminal histories are incorrect. And so if we start at our level on the data entry and making sure that our decisions are properly represented on the court orders, it makes it easier for our staff to properly enter the data entry or the data into the case management systems that then get off to the Michigan State Police. Errors are made. We do correct errors all the time. And the clean slate has really, I think, cleaned up a lot of the mess that were a lot of the criminal histories that we were relying on. I think there's still work to go. And again, at least in the district court, I know they've got piles and piles of reports downstairs that they're matching the numbers for this fingerprint with the disposition.
I just wanted to say I had for a while did the set-asides, so I can speak a little bit to this. So the clean slate legislation, it was passed when you were in the House, I think. So what it did is it automatically removed a number of convictions, particularly they had to be a certain type and nonviolent and some other things. So you didn't have to do anything. They just, in theory, got rid of it. And the courts had to submit that information to lean, and then SCALE, which is State Court Administrative Office, they had set some guidelines under which this needed to occur. There were some serious problems, exactly as Judge Hanley said, with courts themselves being disorganized and not able to complete the mandate. So if individuals have and would fall under this clean slate legislation, which is a beautiful thing, it cleaned up a lot of records, and it removed it off of people. It was like, when I say cleaned up records, it removed it off someone's record, their criminal record. So if you know someone or that's, whether or not they would fit, they should check, and you can get a copy of your criminal record. Let me do one other distinction. That does not mean that you qualify for, or that certain other convictions were set aside, right? Those you have to file with the court. And so that's what I had done for a few years, is listen to and hear and then set aside other convictions that were not part of the mandatory suite to remove convictions off of records. So if there are any questions, you need to check on that. One last note. LEAN, which is Michigan's law enforcement network, and that's where the records go to, there's a certain period of time in which it's supposed to remove. That has nothing to do with the FBI's record keeping. So our state, with our clean slate, can't dictate what the feds do, because we live in a federalist system. So whatever the feds do, they're going to keep those records. So that's just something to know. Now, in terms of disclosure, things of that nature, that's a different story, because again, they're state offenses and they shouldn't. The feds don't have any reason to get involved with them. But they do have the record because it is shot to the feds.
And I want to add one thing. Please add, we're somewhat preaching to the choir here with so many defense attorneys in the room, but I want to just say, you got to advocate for yourself. One thing we found when we had to do all of the clean slate for juvenile as well, because the law was passed, names were spelled differently on different court forms. Your clients, if they say, look, I tried to get this done, you know, Eugene L. could be Eugenal in one. So if they say that to you, it's really, there are like 5 people with their names spelled differently, we found. And it was a monumental effort. I really want to give kudos. Our staff worked so hard in the data division to really do this. And so it's incumbent on them if they had aliases or different names. It was just one letter that might have changed it. We really try to pay attention to that, according to Ruth Rising, who's worked for the court for 52 years.
There are hyphens, there are apostrophes, there are capital letters in the middle, there are everything that can help us change, change the identification. Kalamazoo Defender has an expungement clinic generally. I don't know where the funding's at or when the next one might be coming up, but if you ever have any questions, they're the place to start.
Great, thank you for that. As someone whose name is very difficult to say and spell, I appreciate knowing that the time is taken to clean that up. Okay, now family court folks. How can courts and community organizations collaborate more effectively to promote restorative justice, especially for youth? And I say the family court folks because I want to start with you first, and then I want to shift to the other judges. Because I feel like sometimes restorative practices and restorative justice gets a bad rep. We say things like, oh, we just want to hug it out with kids, and we just, you know, there's something to be said about restorative practices. So I want to start first with our family folks, and then we'll move into the other judges. Who would like to start?
So restorative justice is really, it means different things to different people, right? So we, within the court system, we for the juvenile family division, we look to rehabilitate and put kids in situations and in community-based situations because the law mandates it now. There was a change in 2023. But Kalamazoo is really ahead of many other counties. We've been doing diversion for years. There are counties when we go to judges' conferences, there are judges where they're charging for smoking or they're incarcerating kids for truancy and things that they shouldn't be, status offenses they call them. But we need to bring the community in. There are so many things that the judges do beyond just hearing cases. It's behind the scenes, the work that we do, whether it's a problem-solving court, whether it's we have a juvenile drug court, we've had and we're probably going to reestablish a juvenile mental health court, and trying to connect kids who are under-resourced and not treated the way society should be treating children. We get them access to things that we can, particularly in our problem-solving courts, and trying to get them clothing, whether it's getting mental health treatment through ISK, those types of things. Judge Barnard, go ahead.
And there's a juvenile home. We typically have 40 or so youth at any given time in that juvenile home, and there's a lot of outside groups that come into the juvenile home and help and mentor and teach and do all sorts of things. We have a partnership with CCJT. There is, if you're interested in something like that, we have to make sure we have a duty to protect these children as well. We can't have, inappropriate influences on the kids or these sorts of things. So there's a way you can apply for your organization to be, to come in and provide services to you.
Yeah, I see Pamela Humes here. So she's part of a project we're trying with the county implementation team with the court, which is bringing in all of the school districts, ARESA, the mental health providers, DHHS, and trying to get them to meetings periodically to talk about what we can do to do pre-diversion. So we're not even just talking about diversion before they're even charged, before they even come to the court, because we are at the end of the road when you come to court. And when we fail our kids, well, before that, that's when they're going to end up in that system, and we see it all the time. I started the education docket for truancy, which is like a consent calendar, and what we're trying to do is get kids access to ISK. Oftentimes, it's not their fault. They're not going to school. It's the family's fault. It's under-resourced, and so if you know anybody who wants to be a school bus driver for KPS, go talk to Dr. Slade.
Anyone else want to answer this question on restorative practices?
So again, I'm in the criminal court and I do felonies. So when people are before me and being sentenced, they're either going to prison, jail, or probation, or some combination of that. So if they're going to prison, there's nothing I can really do on my end to make sure that person gets the services that they need. I always take the person into account when I'm sentencing. I think restorative justice is taking into account, and we have to take into account people's mitigating circumstances, right? If someone had a very terrible childhood, I certainly take that into account. If someone struggled with substance use or other issues, I always try to take that into account when I'm considering the sentence. And the place where we can do the most is obviously probation, by ordering conditions that we think will help the person. And, a lot of times we can do that. We can order them to get services that we think they need, or when they're working with their probation agent, the agent can identify what they need as they interview them and make sure if they need connection to mental health services, substance use disorder treatment, those kinds of things. That will actually help them, because to me that's what restorative justice is, where we can help people maybe come out at the end of this with better opportunities and a healthier person. I know it doesn't seem like, the criminal justice system is the place to do that, but sometimes it's the only place left to do that. That's where we are.
That's good. Vanessa, you want to weigh in? No. Okay. Okay, sounds good. All right, I thought maybe you were reaching for them. All right, here we go. Okay. What partnerships currently exist between the courts, local schools, nonprofits, or community organizations to help keep people out of the justice system, Judge Bill?
I am not a good person to ask that question because I have not worked in that arena in about 3 years, so.
When you were.
When I was, all right, Bill Chapman. When I was, let me say this. Kalamazoo is a wealthy community. And by wealthy, I don't mean we all have a lot of money. I mean, we have a lot of richness. We have a lot of people who step up. And one of the things Judge Sharma had indicated is the juvenile mental health court, which is the last specialty court that I engaged in. And I can tell you the organizations from ISK, because we met a lot. We met a lot. And people in the community came forward and engaged. Bible Baptist Church, we engaged with the church, and they had a program working and developing certain skill sets from, carpentry to other things. We had the YMCA. We had, and these are, I know I'm missing organizations here, but I can tell you there were so many organizations that stepped up. And we only had, because it was such an intensive program, we only had between 10 and 15 kids involved at any one point in time. But the goal was to get employment and to get wraparound services, so when those kids needed something, they were there. What's the bicycle program? They came in, I forgot what breakaway bikes.
Open roads.
Open roads participated. The community just opened up, and getting a little bit of chills here. I'm not a chill kind of guy, but the fact is that people are coming out of the woodwork helping us when we ask for help. And so we are a rich community. We just got to make sure that we continue to draw the connections together for those people and those organizations to help. And it made a huge difference. I got a card from one kid who I never thought was going to graduate, who graduated, and he ended up moving to Benton Harbor, and he sent me a graduation note. Actually, it was his worker who sent it to me, and he reminded me that I was going to send him some money, so I sent him some money when he graduated, right? I wrote a little check and sent it over to him. Other young people that I'll see at McDonald's or I'll see out working that we were connected to. And honestly, there's no better feeling. It's a beautiful thing. So I know I'm rambling, but
No.
you asked.
Yeah, I did. Because we worked together on some things in Hill within the court. If you could also add other community organizations that you may have been.
Yeah, most front-facing one.
Are you on? You're dying?
I think the most front-facing one that we have right now is we have Urban Alliance directly in the jail system right now. And there's really community partnership there. They bring in a group of individuals. Sometimes those are classified by the deputies in the jail. Sometimes the judges will say something directly. Sometimes it's defense attorneys in cooperation with even the prosecution, identifying some of those individuals to go through some skills sessions. Kind of adjacent to that, you've got all the different partner groups that we have.
Do you have batteries?
So the treatment courts have touch a wide variety of groups outside of the court system, from therapists to almost anybody else you can think of. And I think the judges are constantly looking at additional inroads there. I think the problem is that I found after I've become a judge is that the days kind of just hit you in the face and they run right through, and then by the time you're done, you're going, okay, it's 5:30, and I'm not sure that I can get to all the things that I initially wanted to when I started the day. And I think sometimes really talking to the community, it's helpful even if it's uncomfortable, I don't think any of us are actually that scary, coming up to us and saying, hey, I want to have a conversation. Judge Barnard had alluded to it earlier, and I think it's really important. So I'll leave it at that.
If I could just add,
Absolutely.
we are just so lucky that we have the Kalamazoo defenders in our community who are public defenders, and they have a whole village. So admittedly, we sort of lean into them because we know that they are connecting their clients to whatever services they can. I'm a new judge, and I would love to continue learning and figuring out how we can collaborate more. Sometimes it can be challenging as a judge because we can't talk to a defendant on their own, right? They have attorneys. So there are some challenges as a judge to being directly connected, but I certainly hope over time, I would like to figure out ways we can be more collaborative.
And I just want to lift something that Judge Jones said about not being afraid to literally walk in the courtroom and ask a question. Ms. GP, I don't think she's still here, but she actually did that like 2 weeks ago where she had a question about something for another community member. She didn't give me any specific names or any specific details, but she came in, she sat in my courtroom, I saw her back there, I said, Ms. Gigi, what are you doing here? I have a question. I said, okay. When I finish doing these things, I'll have you come up here and we can talk. And sometimes, I'm not saying every single judge, every single person will have time to do that. Sometimes our dockets are crazy and we just don't have capacity to do it. But if you feel like you have gone to every resource or you keep going and you're not getting any answers, I believe our courtrooms are open, they're public spaces. And to give another shout out to the defender's office, what I did with her was I said, hey, I talked to the defense attorney that was in there doing arraignments. If you have a few minutes, can you take her and talk to her? She has some questions that need to be answered. I think you're the best resource. And in that moment, she was able to get the information that she needed, the follow-up happened. So don't be afraid to walk into the courtroom and sit in the judge's courtroom, because that may be the way that you get an answer.
I like that. Thank you so much. So I want to shift us over to expungement, clean slate, and records reform. So we're going to explore fairness and second chances. What is being done locally to make the expungement process more accessible and affordable? And I'll go to Judge Barnard, Judge Morse.
Well, I know that the County Bar Association, as well as the Defender and others, have held a clinic. The courts are involved. I know our district court is heavily involved in that, and perhaps one of them would like to touch on that. The clean slate, as been alluded to earlier, that's where things, you don't have to go through this whole process of applying, it falls off. And one of the things that can hold that up is if you owe a large amount of restitution. There was just a case recently that said, no, you have to look at the ability to pay that restitution. So even that restitution can be, even if you can spend that restitution, but it can be quite clean. So I'll turn it over.
Well, I actually do expungements now every, 8 weeks or 10 weeks. And so we might have up to 20 people that come through our court. They have all their paperwork done. Typically, they've been assisted by the clerk, and they make sure that they get all their paperwork. And just so you understand what it means, and I'm not going to tell you exactly because I don't have it in front of me, but it can be either 5 or 7 years where you can get up to 3 felonies, potentially depending on what type of felonies they are expunged, and depending upon how old they are. So that is actually one of our best days when people come into our courts and we walk through the paperwork and we see if they qualify, and then they're officially expunged, and that's awesome. Because we, as judges, really understand that, the felonies on people's records really impacts their lives. So there are a lot of resources. Kalamazoo Defender can always point you in the right direction, but I'm pretty sure the clerk's office is quite helpful as well.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. In district court, we are on a rotation monthly, where one district court judge is assigned on a Friday morning to do expungements. It starts at the clerk's office. There's a form you fill out. It goes to the Michigan State Police. You get your fingerprints done. It goes to the Attorney General's. They drive in. We get a letter back from the Attorney General telling us, yeah, that looks like they qualified, judge. Just please make sure X, Y, and Z. We get the criminal history from the Michigan State Police saying, okay, yep, that's all you got. And then we have to ask additional questions. Basically, how is this going to improve your life? Why do you think this is important? I had, just last time, I think this lady was like 78 years old, and she had this retail fraud. No, is that what? She had a charge on her record that wasn't wiped out by clean slate, and it was so important to her that she filed this petition at her age. It's not going to impact her employment, not going to impact her housing, but it was important to her as a human and as a role model for her children, her grandchildren, that she had this done. And so those are the days that we cry in court. Those are the days that you applaud, you give hugs, big congratulations, high fives, and it can be a frustrating or arduous process, but even if you don't have it all together the first time, we're not going to dismiss it. If you need something, we'll put it out to the next month, and we want the legislature and the legislation to have the impact that it was intended to have.
So on that note, who holds folks accountable when it doesn't fall off like it's supposed to, or it doesn't get done the way it's supposed to? Like with my credit, when I must have fall off my credit.
Well, if we're being transparent, which is kind of the purpose of this thing, there isn't a step-by-step process for that. When something is wrong, usually, I think every judge can speak to this to a degree. I know there have been times where I've been upset about something because something clearly broke down in the process, and generally speaking, in those moments, I will send a short and strongly worded email to someone, and it's one of the few times where the tagline at the bottom of the email generally helps, and I usually get a response very quickly. And then we figure out where it went wrong, and if we need to hold additional hearings related to that, we will. The hardest thing is that depending on how something is presented to each of us, we may never know that there was an issue in the first place. So this goes back to effective communication from people. If you think that something's wrong, it's got to be said, and it's got to be pointed out. It's not something that's automatically going to be seen by a judge.
And then from a resource standpoint, because I know the first part of the question was about the resources.
Yes.
MichiganLegalHelp.org is a great resource if you're looking to do an expungement, or if you're not sure. They actually have a tool on their website to tell you if you're eligible. There's a lot of information there that will explain the clean slate process in general. But if you are a person or you know somebody that is wondering about expungement, you can go to MichiganLegalHelp.org. If you Google Michigan Legal Help, the website will come up. They have a tool. And then a lot of people will use the word expungements. That's what we use. But what it's called legally is to set aside conviction. So that's what we're doing. We're setting aside convictions. So if you just Google expungement and you're frustrated because you're like, where's this expungement stuff? It's because you're looking for the paperwork to set aside a conviction.
Great, thank you. So we are nearing the end of our time together. I have just two more questions I want to ask. The first, with the current crime and incarceration rates in our county, what strategies are in place to expand prevention, rehabilitation, and restoration services for both youth and adults? And I want to start with Judge Sharma, and then we'll go from there.
All right, so I did a little homework, and what I wanted to talk about is the legislation that changed in 2023, which was called the Justice for Kids and Communities Package. Judge Morris, I believe, was in the legislature at that time. So this was kind of groundbreaking, but it follows what a lot of other states were doing. We want to bring the community into the court system, but prior to the children actually getting in trouble. So that's called the pre-court diversion. The big one was eliminating fines and fees for families. That reform package was instrumental because they rarely get paid, number one. They're huge. So some of the restitution you cannot waive, but, and one basic, I think it's a crime victims. The other thing is to try and enhance and give a little bit of community-based services, incentivize that, and the way they do that is through some money. The county pays 50%, and the state, through DHHS, pays 50% of housing our youth in our juvenile justice complex. They changed that to community-based services. We'd have a 75 from the state, 25 from the county. With that, we were able to implement something that we've been talking about for years, which was opening a facility called Glenn's House. It's a respite home prevention program, which is operated by Family and Children's Services. We will put our kids there. Right now, there's 6 beds for youth, male only, and I think the people from Glenn's House are gone, but at any rate, this has been something we've been looking to do for quite some time. Since I got on the bench talking about where can we put kids where they get some restorative sort of breathing room, maybe away from their family. These are low level kind of, there's DV in the home, there was something where there was a dispute, and they can get some treatment, and it's a crisis sort of intervention. It's a non-secure facility, so that was something that we were able to do because of the legislative changes to what we call the Child Care Fund. So basically, there wasn't a lot of money to go with all of this, and the community-based services are under-resourced, just like a lot of the families. So money, and I don't know if anyone's paying attention to the federal budget, but SAMHSA was cut, which is for the substance abuse, mental health, drastically. Surprisingly, and I was at the signing of the Medicaid bill, the state of Michigan came through, and particularly in behavioral health, Medicaid funding for behavioral health and prevention. And statewide, the RX for kids was funded by this legislature, so it's bizarre that some things were, the governor had to give up all her business incentive money from SOAR to make that happen, I think. And so, at any rate, there are things that are being done locally, but we are also going to be involved with the Michigan Center for Youth Justice to do community mapping, and they got a grant from DHHS for doing community mapping in Kalamazoo. I pushed to participate in that. We weren't going to, but we are, so we can get some community mapping about what are the resources for families and children.
Thank you. Judge Morse, do you have anything you can add to that?
Well, some of the things I mentioned earlier, we have mental health recovery court, we're about to have a veterans court, we have women and men's drug treatment court program. So, you know, as many people as qualify for those programs, we certainly fill those up to the best we can. What was the other part of the question?
It was, caught me flipping the page. With the current crime and incarceration rates in our county, what strategies are in place to expand prevention, rehabilitation, and restoration services for both youth and adults?
Well, right, so we're, you know, the circuit court and the district court are not so much in the business of prevention, but the rehabilitation part we're very interested in, and like I said, through mostly probation on my end, and then the treatment courts is where we really can accomplish a lot of that. And again, like I said previously, where we can help people through their criminal justice process, we certainly do. And I think people are constantly trying to be creative to think about what else could be added that could, you know, just offer people even more. It's always dependent on resources, and we fight for every dollar constantly. But I can tell you that all the judges up here are very interested in making sure we offer as much as we can.
Great. So I want to round us out with 2 quick questions. I want you to each share what messages that you would like future generations to know about leadership, empathy, and service in our community? And what is your one big takeaway from this event today? So I'll say it again so everybody knows it. Ready? What messages would you like to share with our future generation about leadership, empathy, and service? And what is your one reflection or takeaway from today's event?
So in terms of the first part of the question, I would say we need diverse people with different ideas to enter into this profession. Michigan is facing a shortfall in lawyers, believe it or not, that there are not as many lawyers coming up into the profession. What that means is that people who are navigating these systems, the criminal justice system, the civil justice system, won't have access to representation, especially in some of these areas where there are legal deserts. What does that mean for our broader community? That means a delay in justice, and it means a delay in advocacy for people to get the probation or the treatment court or other creative resources. The other thing is that the judiciary and the legal system is changing. I think COVID introduced the new way of practicing. It used to not be that we would be remotely in court. So with the changes in how the legal profession, the changes that the legal profession is undergoing, there's also a lot of room for new voices to bring in what does the future of this profession look like, which means there's new resources and new opportunities. So I think a lot of times when we see all the things that are happening in our country, we think it's daunting, it's the end, and some people just want to put a blanket over their head and not do anything. But one of the things that I really believe, especially as a Black person in this country, I know that for Black people in times of unrest and times where the country has been most oppressive, that is when we look at the history, our community has been most creative, most innovative. And so I say that to the broader community in this room. This is the time for us to get most innovative and most creative and to enter into this profession. If you see that there's something different that can happen, it might be a no today, but laws are constantly changing. 5 years ago, we didn't have clean slate. We have it today. In 10 years, it's going to be in a different state, and it will work even better. So what is it that we can do today? What can we be innovative today? Not lose hope, but think about what we can do to really fight and push for the justice that we want to see in our country.
What she said. Seriously, she said it all. I mean, every single one of us up here, we love our jobs. We love serving you. We love serving our community. And the hard decisions that we make because we have to. That's not enjoyable. I know that I've had conversations with people in this room about this very issue. Kalamazoo County, I already said it has a lot of wealth, a lot of resources here. Wouldn't it be nice in 10 years or 20 years that we were actually the sun shining, county on the hill? I think that could actually happen. But it's got to happen with full wraparound services. And I use the word wraparound because I think all of us in here are familiar with that word, wraparound services. But when I'm saying that, I don't mean just for the kids, because we're so good at compartmentalizing, we're going to help this family, or this type of family, we're going to help this parent with this sort of condition, and we pigeonhole, which sometimes is needed. But we've got to do that in an overall approach, where everyone in the community, whether it's someone who's looking for a job or someone who's suffering from mental health services, we can't simply take one piece of a person's life and say, we're going to work on that, and it's going to make it better. I had the fortunate situation of meeting someone on vacation, and then she became a speaker, and then I visited over in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, they don't lock people up like we do. They don't put people in homes like we do. They put them in positions so that whatever your skill set is, you're doing the best you can. They teach people how to live. And that's what we're missing. We've got to have a system that helps teach people how to live. It's not helping removing fathers and mothers out of their home, and, you know, and then who's raising the kids, right? That is not helping anybody. But I know it has to happen. But we've got to have a system, and it's got to be a 10 or a 20-year plan. And it's got to have that full wrap-up. You need a job, you need a mental health service, you need substance abuse service, you need child care. You need all those things. And it can't simply be compartmentalized. And I know that's not a direct answer to the question, but that's how I feel.
And I like your feeling. That's all good. Who's next? And then also, what's your biggest takeaway from today? Oh no, they had their chance.
They had their chance.
Tomorrow. Thursday night football is on.
And the first question, I'm going to hone in on the word empathy. When you're a judge, whether it's presiding over the drug court, as I was doing in the men's drug court, it could be youth who live in horrible circumstances. You have to gut check yourself every day and think, this person, if I was a doctor, it's like they're laying on a gurney in front of me. They need help. And so if you can reach down and lend them a hand and bring in whatever resources you need, that's what I would like to see happen in my career. And I think, there were some youth that came up and were great, asking me questions, and that's my takeaway as well. It kind of ties into the former question. That's our hope. And bringing those kids in, I've had a lot of mentors, that aren't necessarily always helpful, or a lot of the interns, but they're always, they're learning. They come in, they learn about the court, and I love bringing the youth in to the extent possible. I know Judge Bell does a lot. He has a lot of interns, and this one is due. So anyway, pass it on.
Thank you.
So my questions are joined together too, because the thing about tonight is this is community. This is community coming together to interact and to learn from each other. I mean, mostly you're hearing from us, but because nothing is harder than when you're sentencing a young person and there's a room full of people sad and upset that they're going away. And I wondered on more than one occasion, why were we able to stop this from happening? There's a room full of people that love this person. And what happened? And a big problem for the Kalamazoo community right now is that a lot of people don't feel safe. So a lot of people carry firearms, and that gets a lot of people into trouble. So the root of what I would like to see happen is find a way for people to feel safe so that they're not doing that. And then I don't have to face a room of people. And part of that is the people coming together to make sure that everyone does feel safe. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so my kids grew up Spring Valley, Hillside, Kalamazoo Central. I've lived here for a number of years. Judge Bell and I were in private practice for 10 years before I became a referee and he was appointed to the bench. And so our kids are hurting. They're sad. They don't feel safe. And the one thing that I've really noticed lately is having been a referee at family court, I'm now seeing the kids that were in front of me 10 years ago are now graduated to the adult system. And I thought I did a pretty good job back then with what I had available to me to help encourage them and provide them opportunities so that that wasn't going to be the case. Fortunately, I'm not seeing all of them, so I know under certain circumstances, maybe a little bit of a message was heard, and I certainly tried to listen to them. And I still do. I try to listen in court, and that's my big message is we are listeners. We've had active listening training in the court system for that very reason, because there are things that we're missing, there are things that need to be followed up on, that extra question. In some cases, it's a driving while license suspended. It's like, do you know what you need to do to get your driver's license? No. well, let's print out your driving record. I think we can have that conversation. Or this is where the trouble lies. You gotta wait another 12 months or what have you. They just say you have no idea. And so my biggest takeaway is that we have to give them the hope that this isn't the way things have to be.
Yeah, so my hope and my takeaway are kind of tied into the same thing, and I think, and it was something I thought about earlier during the earlier program. Judge Parker said it. My grandfather used to always say it, which was 50% of life is just showing up, and there's components to that, though. I think to a conversation I had with my oldest son. My oldest son's 12 years old. He's in middle school at the end of last year. He actually got a D in gym. He got a D in gym, and I don't know how you do it, other than to explain that he didn't watch a bunch of videos he was supposed to. And the teacher was very strict about it. He said, you can't make this up, you have to do it by X time, et cetera, et cetera. He got a D in his last trimester or whatever it was. So we went into this year and we had a conversation about, okay, for middle school, 50% of your life is showing up. You do that well, you had perfect attendance last year. The rest of it is about paying attention and consistency. And then in terms of the context over to this and what this represents, it's showing up with consistency. I think people in the audience, I've seen almost every face before in my life, show up with consistency and push groups like ours in the right direction. I think that needs to be consistent moving forward. I think the consistency in terms of bringing other voices in to speak back to diversity is important too. Because even though the group that's here is great, I've met and talked to a lot of the people in this room before, bringing in other diverse voices and point of views is incredibly important because each and every one of us sitting up here has some blind spots within the judiciary and otherwise. And I think that's important moving forward. So to me, my hope coming out of this is that everybody keeps on showing up and that there's consistency and action behind that.
This is geared towards youth, right? Okay. Raise your hand if you're 30 or under in this room. There you go. All right, so I'm speaking to you too. Okay, wait, 30 and under. There we go. One of the defenders. You know, somebody said to me years ago, she was, we were talking about youth justice well before I was a judge, and she said, you know, in every church in this community, Charlotte, every single church has 4 or 5 people who could mentor youth. And that's what we need. Because we're starting way too late. And I would say to young people, some of the things you need to learn about is to be trauma informed, to understand what ACEs means, what adverse childhood experiences are, why are you here is right. What could we have done? Where have we failed this person as a community? And, you know, truth be told, Kalamazoo is a wealthy community, Judge Bell, but it's also, there are 2 Kalamazoo's. And the inequality, or under-resources we call it sometimes, is where I think we have failed people and our priorities. And I'll tell you, any young people, as soon as you're 18, vote. It makes a difference. Elections matter. So, Anyway, people didn't feel like they made a difference, and you do. One person can make a difference, and so, you know, thank you for listening to us for this long.
All right. So I would just like to say finally, I'm a firm believer that the thing that breaks your heart is where your work is. So I'm glad to see so many people stuck it out and hung in here with us tonight. I thank you, judges, for the work that you do for our children, for our communities, and seeking to make it a safer place. I value community service. It's huge in my DNA. And I know that engaged citizens make the difference for us. So thank you for your time. Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask our fearless leader here to come back and join us. We give her a round of applause. Thank you so much.
our moderator and our judges and for yourselves for sticking it out. I thank y'all for staying up for extra 30 minutes. I know we got started a little bit late, but I hope you all did enjoy it. And one thing I am going to kind of ask of our judges if they can, I know you guys did not receive a list of the questions ahead of time, but I do have those questions for you. And if by chance you have some time between now and the holiday season, if you could answer a couple of those questions and send it back to us so we can send those back out to everybody, because I know we kind of missed a chunk of those questions this evening. But I just want to say thank you for everyone to come back to our second biannual forum. And so our next event is our gala, so I hope to see all of you there.